So this is going to be another KDA update video. I want to go over what has happened since my last video, which I posted on March 18th, so it's been exactly a month. I didn't plan it that way, but that's a nice coincidence. And in this video, I was looking at support zones, right? You can tell by the thumbnail, I had some support zones marked out. And the reason I was looking for support zones is because we saw bearish signs at the highs. First off, my more macro analysis on this was, basically I'm looking for a weekly structure to break bullishly before I can really justify targeting any higher levels. And so far, we have not broken weekly structure. We have only SFP'd it once here before getting a significant retracement, and then we've come up to SFP, the high of the SFP. And, in my mind, this is not really a break. It's definitely not a strong break. Even if candles over here did close above the actual lower high, because it started off as an SFP, then we got a retracement. I'm basically looking at the staircase method here, where you will take the break of structure line. If you get an SFP, you close candles below it. Then you move the break of structure line up to the high of the SFP. This is the new point that you have to break structure. And we just came up to SFP that. We have not closed above that either. So if you want to argue that we technically broke structure because we closed weekly candles above the actual weekly lower high, you can. But I would argue that, it's definitely not a strong break. It's nothing convincing for me. As for a clear sign of strength in terms of the macro trend, in terms of like the macro trend actually reversing and, getting a clear signal of that, I don't think we've gotten that yet. Not with weekly market structure. It is, at the very best, a very poor looking break. And sure, it could result in, just kind of a higher low in a sense, and then continuation later where we eventually do get a strong, convincing break. But until we do get a convincing break above this high, I'm looking at this asset as it still has not shown high time frame signs of strength. And I also pointed out in my last video that, we had gotten some bearish divs on that high. Money flow, was diverging all the way from this point. We put in a lower high in terms of money flow. And, this area right here was looking pretty bearish because we got the SFP originally. Then we came up to SFP the high again with daily bearish divergences. And, even kind of money flow divs there as well. Money flow did put in a lower high even though it went up later. You can still count that as a money flow div. Regardless, though, I was planning out some support levels in case we ended up getting a retrace. And, looking at this here, you can tell that none of those support levels actually worked to hold price up and give it another crack at the highs. We just blasted through both of these zones. And that's fine. Not every support level is going to work. As a trader, I plan out many different scenarios and many different areas where I'd be interested in trades if I get clear confirmations. And looking through this, I do not see any clear confirmations in either of these two tests of these zones, either this one or this one. And I can run through that quickly. And if you want to skip forward to the current analysis and, what I'm looking at in terms of this larger range, I'll leave timestamps below, but I am going to run over, pretty much the price action from this high down and see if there were any confirmations at those key zones. So first, I would look at this on the 4-hour time frame. I think the 4-hour trend looks pretty good. And, looking at the first support zone that I marked out, we got a test of it right here. We just barely wicked into it before getting a nice bounce. And, it did give a good reaction, but it did not give a reversal of the trend. And I did not trade this as a reaction, nor did I look for a trade, targeting any higher levels like up here. I didn't take any trades on this asset since my last video because there were no confirmations. So first off, we did not see any divergences on this low. Looking down from this point, this momentum wave here was that low. There were no divergences. It put in a lower low along with price, and money flow also put in a lower low along with price. Money flow was continuing to trend lower at the time. So that was sign number one that this might not work as an actual reversal point. And, price started ranging following this bounce for a little bit. We had this range going on where we put in a high, we retraced, came pretty close to the low, but did not take it. And then we came up to actually SFP, the high of the range. So we took that high out, only left a wick above it. And that SFP of the high of the range marked the lower high. And from there, we continued structure downwards. And, there were no real, reversal signs on market cipher even following this low. Money flow continued to put in lower lows in this area. This was not a divergence because the momentum wave put in a higher low along with price. Price made a higher low in the range. If it had taken out the low, that might have been a little bullish, especially since at the time it looked like there was a slight money flow div, but it ended up going lower later. So there were no divergences in this area. There was nothing you could really call a good market cipher basic strat setup. If we had taken out this low, then there would have been a chance to break market structure following a move above this high. But regardless, it was still a range high. We still came up and could not even close candles above it, and from there we got a sharp rejection. So I would say there was no good confirmations in there, nothing that would make me want to take a trade there. And then we come down to the next support zone where we get a bounce, it looks like right from the 786. So again, a nice reaction from there. I did not trade the reaction. And even if you did, it doesn't look like there were many great signs to trade that reaction. It looks like, yeah, there was a slight momentum div on the 4 hours, so you could have justified a reaction trade with that, but, in my opinion, that was very risky. Money flow continued to put in its lowest point as we got that bounce. As we hit off the 786, money flow put in its lowest point. I think in the overall downtrend, yeah, it even came down to take out the lows from over here, so money flow is still putting in lower lows. We get a slight divergence. That could have been like the first hint that there might be, strength building up. But what I really would have wanted to see was a change of market structure. And, looking at this, we did not get that. In fact, we only came up to SFP, the lower high. And the reason I'm not calling this a lower high is because we did not put in a lower low right here. This was actually an exact double bottom. If you look up here where it says L, this is showing the lowest point of the wick, and here it is 1.225, and the other wick is 1.225, so it's equal lows. And I don't like calling equal lows a lower low, because it's not a lower low. You didn't even go a little bit lower. You went to the exact same price point. So therefore, I cannot call this a lower high. And, even if you do want to call this a lower high, what do you have? Well, you have a candle that barely closed above it. Most of this is wick, and a little bit of it is candle. We then get a retrace. We then come up to SFP this wick. I'll clean it up a little bit so it's not as messy, but we come up to then basically SFP this wick. Maybe a slight close, over here, but again, most of the price action above this wick and what I would actually call the lower high is wicks rather than candles. So yeah, we couldn't even change market structure following that. And essentially, again, the SFP of, what was this time an actual market structure point led to the reversal to break the support zone, just continue the downtrend lower. So the reason that none of these areas worked, and the reason why I didn't take any trades in these areas, is because there was not good setups with good confirmations. So now I'll hide this old TA, and I'll hide the anchored VWAPs. Yeah, there was also anchored VWAP confluence in that first zone. We lost that anchored VWAP, back tested it as resistance. Then we broke down through the other anchored VWAP, which this one is the all-time low one, or at least this cycle low. So I think this is a more significant one. But regardless, we broke through both of them. So I would not really be looking at them anymore. You could look at them, or maybe a sign of strength if we get back above them. But in that case, I would rather use an anchored VWAP from the high. Look at the bearish strength from this high up here, and looking at this one, you can see it has been respected on the way down. So I actually like the anchored VWAP pull from the high. You can see it tested it many times, kind of tested it here before going lower, and it's getting pretty close to the point of control. So there's going to be some confluence pretty soon with the AVWAP and the point of control. That's going to be a pretty key resistance area. But yeah, let me hide all of this other stuff and let's talk about what has gone on recently. Where is price at right now? So right now we're actually at a very key area. We have just come down to take out the low of this range essentially, which is also a market structure point. We put in a high, a higher low, a higher high. Now we are testing the higher low. And this is a very important point. If we break below this point, then we can expect that we may see further downside. And, honestly, something like this, breaking below this low, could lead to a full-on rotation all the way back down to the cycle lows. It doesn't look like there's too much support down in this area, at least if you're looking at it on the lower time frames. But if we go to the weekly time frame, I did find something pretty interesting down here. So first off, on the weekly, I don't know if I would necessarily call this weekly structure. It's a little funny because from the high to the low, it's not a very extended move. You maybe would call this like 3-day or 2-day structure. But because this is basically a result of the weekly SFP, this retracement followed by another high up here, I'm kind of looking at this as weekly structure. And, on the weekly, we did SFP the low of the range. We took out the low with a wick. We closed a candle back above this higher low. So from, an SFP perspective, that's a good sign. We know that SFPs of important market structure points can lead to rotations back to the upside, like what happened up here. We got an SFP, we rotated to the downside. And something else interesting that I noticed on this weekly chart is we have an order block here. And this order block is actually right below the original low of the range. This order block was literally sitting right below this range low. So price came down, we literally put in a low right above this order block, got a reversal from there, and now we just SFP'd the low of the range into that order block. So there is something significant sitting below this range that could hold us up. However, I would like to see us actually hold the range. I'd like to see price get back within the range, not really close many candles down in this area. You could look at a staircase method here, but, when it's only one candle, like we didn't get, a many candle retracement before coming back down. So I don't really like to use staircases unless we actually get a retracement before coming back to there. And you can, it's something to consider. Like we did close an SFP, you could kind of look at it as even if we close some candles where we're at now, and then we get back within the range later, that still could be, not that bearish of a sign. It may still lead to a reversal. But I do think it would look better if this candle could close blue, or at least close within this range back above this higher low. I think that'd look better. Knowing that an SFP of this range low can lead to a retracement, and knowing that, so far we have SFP'd it on the weekly, I don't think it'd be a bad idea to look at lower time frames for some signs of strength that, could potentially hint towards the reversal before it happens. And what would be some signs of strength? Well, I'll start off on the weekly because I'm already on the weekly. I think it'd be a good sign, if we continue closing weekly candles with just wicks below this area. I think that would be a good sign of strength if we can get this candle up and close it blue. I'd like that a lot more than if we kind of close where it's at now with this purple candle, even if it is kind of inside of this wick. I think that'd look better, and I definitely don't want to see price come down and close below this wick. I think that'd be a very bad look. And then obviously, later on, you'd look for weekly candles to be closing higher and higher back within this range. That'd be a good sign. Now, the daily time frame does look a little sketchy. We have momentum putting in lower lows. We have money flow just crossing into the red, putting in lower lows relative to the last time it dipped into the red. You can kind of see the trend where it put in a high, a low, a lower high, and now a lower low. That's not really a good look. But, you could zoom out a little bit and say, all right, well, we had this very deep move into the red and money flow. It put in a high. Now could it be coming down for a higher low before a higher high? So looking at the larger trend, it's not looking as bad. However, I have to say we're not seeing anything that is really convincing me of a significant low being put in here. That's not really a good sign as we are at such a crucial point. But we have seen, significant pivot points be put in with kind of sketchy looking market cipher. It doesn't happen that often. Usually there are better topping signs like what we saw up at this high. We had clear signs, but it still could happen. And, maybe if we see some better signs on the lower time frames, then I'd be more likely to think that maybe we just end up reversing with this kind of crappy looking market cipher. Or maybe we, just do something simple like coming back down to take out the low once more, and maybe we can at least get some kind of a bullish div on this daily, something like this. Maybe money flows even starting to work its way back up. Now on the 4-hour, the low correlates to the lowest point in momentum, at least in recent times. So that is not any kind of divergence with momentum. There was a funky looking divergence with money flow because, as we put in the actual low, money flow was higher than where it was at back here. It then went on to put in a lower low. It still technically is higher than this low, but it's not really a good sign when you get a money flow div and then money flow goes on to go lower afterwards, especially not coming, this close to essentially voiding the divergence. But looking at the overall trend, you still can say that the lowest point is right here. Potentially, this is the pivot point. Maybe we go on to start making higher lows in money flow before it ultimately crosses back up and starts spending a majority of its time above the zero line again. You can kind of look at the overall trend and say maybe we have put in the low, but also maybe we haven't. Maybe it needs to come down a little bit before it actually pivots. And I also think that, it wouldn't be a bad thing to come back down and test this low, because that would give the potential for some bullish divergences, some, better bottom signals, and potentially even divergences with money flow continuing, just as long as we don't close a weekly candle down here. Hopefully it either happens like next week, come down like Wednesday of next week, or sometime after the weekly candle closes, or hopefully we do it very quickly and get back up here before the weekly candle closes. On the 3 hour, the overall trend with money flow is continuing. We just put in another lower low, at least a few days ago on Tuesday we did. And it looks like there were no divergences with momentum on that low either. There weren't. Or actually, no, there was technically a slight divergence. There was a local one. So we put in this low just before the actual low and price action was put in. And then there was a slight divergence from here to here. As you can see right there, this low correlates to this green dot. But money flow was looking crappy at the time. It was like locally moving lower, and it went on to put in overall lows in the trend. So that's not really a great sign. But again, maybe we come down, take out the low, and get some better looking divergences here. Maybe money flow starts curving back to the upside. Granted, the overall trend is still down. We haven't shown signs that that is reversing. We haven't really put in significant higher lows and higher highs yet. But, we can be hopeful and say that, maybe this trend is starting to get exhausted and maybe it starts reversing soon. And I say that because on the 2 hour and the 1 hour, we are actually starting to see some signs of strength. So we have the divergences on the 2 hour, those local divs, same as the 3 hour. And here, hang on, let me zoom in here. Looks like we put in almost equal lows. And we actually did put in slightly lower lows. The trend of, lower lows is still technically continuing, but I do like the way that money flow is now curving back to the upside here. It's looking like a better, overall movement than what we've seen previous. Here it was like, kind of flat, and then we get a very quick move to the upside. Here was a very quick move to the upside. Both of those were unsustainable. So, maybe I am being hopeful here, but this curvature to the upside overall looks better. We're also seeing a better, movement to the upside with momentum. I like this trend of like anchor wave, higher low, kind of messing around here, but then we put in like a higher low, continuing that trend. We don't really see clear trends like that elsewhere. It was just kind of like, higher low here and then aggressive move. Back here, we didn't really see that. We maybe had like one trigger wave, but that didn't really do much. So, I may be being hopeful here, but we see better direction, at least as we're, at this important point in the charts. And again, maybe we put in a lower low at some point and actually get some better divergences. The 2 hour does look primed for some nice looking divs if we do put in a lower low. And the 1 hour too is also, again, it's looking a little messy, but you are starting to see that overall curvature to the upside. You're seeing like decent direction with momentum. It's a little funky because it's not exactly a clear trend line, but we have like anchor, higher low, now higher low here as money flow is increasing. And money flow on the 1 hour actually did not put in a lower low on the low. So we do have a slight div. This back here was the lowest point in money flow. We put in a higher low right here. And this is also looking primed for divs if we actually end up taking out that low, ideally just with an SFP before a quick reversal. In terms of market cipher, I'm not seeing signs of strength yet. definitely not yet. I think, things have to develop a bit, but I'm seeing potential, that's for sure. And there are other signs of strength that you could look for as well. If we do end up getting divs on this low, then what does that do? Well, that makes a lower high right here for us to change market structure. So that's another reason why I'm hoping that we come down, print some divs with an SFP this low, and then reclaim this range with a market structure break. We will be breaking back above the value area low of the range. You can see on the daily, since we broke down with this candle, we have not been able to close daily candles back within the value area low. We actually closed right on it here before going lower. So, ideal scenario, I think, is come down, print some divs on this low, reclaim the range, break market structure, maybe even back test the value area low for support. In an ideal world, that's what we would see. I don't know if that's going to happen. Of course, we have to wait and see how things develop. We could just continue lower from here, and, at that point, the idea is scrapped. But as of right now, this is an idea that I will be watching over the next few days or weeks. All right, well, I think that's all I want to go over today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed, consider leaving a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I appreciate all the support. And I'll see you all in the next video.